2001 until the time of his death, and his name is Professor Emmanuel Tumusiime Mutebi. Now, Professor Tumusiime Mutebi is one of the names in this country that resonates with the economy and, of course, which resonates with finances and the bank. Professor Emmanuel Tumusiime Mutebi passed away on the 23rd of January in this year 2022, and today is actually his birthday. He would be celebrating his 73rd birthday on this particular day. Now, today on UBC TV here in our GMU Extra edition, we just want to do a special tribute to the fallen gallant son of this country of Uganda, Professor Emmanuel Tumusiime Mutebi. An engagement will be with many and most of his very close friends. Now, joining me in studios this morning is the Honorable Norbert Mao. With us, you're very welcome, Sibyl.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be back on UBC. And good morning, dear viewers.
Well, thank you so much. Together with the Honorable Norbert Mao is Honorable Dr. Eli Karuhanga, who is on Zoom. Dr. Karuhanga, if you are there, let's just see you and know that you're with us.
Yes, okay. I'm with you. Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be with you this morning.
Okay. We've had your voice and we're about to see your picture. Thank you so much, Dr. Karuhanga. We're happy to have you, and thank you so much for being where you are this morning, and of course being on our special edition of GME Extra as we pay tribute to the foreign governor of the Central Bank of Uganda. Now, before we get into any conversations, let's look at this briefly.
Monetary policy statement for October 2021. The Bank of Uganda, at the Monetary Policy Committee meeting, MPC meeting of October 2021, has decided to maintain the central bank rate.
He was an economist, a banker, and rose through the ranks as permanent secretary and secretary to the Treasury before, and later became the Bank of Uganda governor. His track record speak volumes about a man who headed the country's central bank for 20 years. But who was he? Born and raised in the Western District of Kabale on 27th January 1949, Emmanuel Tumusiime Mutebi attended Kigezi College Butobero and later moved to Makerere College and Makerere University. His attempt to politics while at Makerere University almost landed him at crossroads with the government of Uganda then. The guild campaigns that many term as the most hotly contested race that Makerere University has never witnessed in modern history, beating his arch-rival, later turned friend, Eli Karuhanga, an accomplished lawyer. He fled the country before completing his course to escape the brutal hand of the tyrannical government that got suspicious of his administration and political activities at Makerere University and started hunting him for criticizing its undemocratic tendencies. It was a risk and a tough walk, but this rather became a gate opener for Emmanuel. He was hosted and lived in President Obote's house, who was also in exile then. At this time, he concentrated on his studies and students' politics became secondary. Up to the time of his demise, Emmanuel never ventured into politics, but rather dedicated his life into strengthening the country's economy.
So much, and now that is a Professor Emmanuel Tumsime Mutebile. Just like I said, today is the 27th of January, and this day is when Professor Emmanuel Tumsime Mutebile was born now. He's been celebrating this day as Emmanuel's Day. Normally, I had an opportunity to attend 3 or 4 times Emmanuel's Day. This year, I will be attending Emmanuel's Day in a very different way because Emmanuel is no more. Ndugu, the Honorable Mao, happy to have you, and thank you so much again for being in studios here with us. And let's get to Professor Emmanuel Tumsime Mutebile. Not so many people actually knew about him as a former guild president of Makerere University. You were one like that. Let's talk about the Mutebile that you knew.
Professor Emmanuel Tumsime Mutebile was a very complex person. And sometimes I think that exterior, which many perceived as arrogance and aloofness, was some kind of cover. And if you were able to go beyond that tough exterior, you found a very loving, humorous, generous, and very compassionate person. I think he put that exterior to sort of filter out some types of people he didn't want. You know, like a cactus tree. You just look at a cactus tree and you see the thorns and you don't want to be close to it. But once you overcome that fear and dread of the thorns, you can actually get close. I was a member of parliament and we met him a number of times. When I joined parliament, he was not yet the governor. He became the governor when I was beginning my second term. We had some rope pulling because, remember, we had the pressures from the government at that time, which we started feeling when we were in Makerere University. The World Bank was putting what we call conditionalities. And they required the countries that needed the assistance of the World Bank to privatize their economies, to reduce social spending, meaning cutting expenditures in health, education. They also targeted higher education. That's how I ended up leading a strike in Makerere University to protest those conditionalities, which were known as structural adjustment programs.
The SAPs.
In Makerere, we referred to them as stomach adjustment programs.
From structural?
Yeah, because it meant that there were those who were growing fat, so they adjusted their stomachs and belts outwards. There are those who are growing thin, they had to adjust inwards. So it was appropriate to refer to them as stomach adjustment programs. Tumsime Mutebile did not have a very high regard of politicians. And I do recall when he referred to us in parliament as a bunch of potato growers with whom he does not want to discuss macroeconomic policy.
When was this now?
I think it was in the early 2000s. I don't remember exactly. He said, how do I go to parliament to discuss economic policy with potato growers? I've never forgotten that. And sometimes, of course, when you listen to how our members of parliament debate, you would appreciate the comments made by...
Don't say that, Honorable Mao.
Well, I'm about to turn 55, and I'm a man who declared my mental independence long ago.
And by African standards,
no,
you are an old man?
By all standards, I don't want anybody to occupy my brain. My brain is mine, so I say what I want. And I also pay the price for saying what I want. But I can also defend what I say. So I think many Ugandans would appreciate that when you see people who are out of focus. I met Professor Mutebile in a number of international meetings. I was a founder of an organization known as the Parliamentary Network on the World Bank, and I was on the board. It was an organization of MPs from all over the world. Our chairman was a former Minister of International Affairs in the Netherlands, Mr. Bart Konders. We had people like Hilda Johnson, who was also a minister in Norway. We had another minister, Charity Ngilu, from Kenya, and a number of people. And our goal was to have parliamentary oversight of the loans. And Tumusime Mutebile was very supportive. He realized that apart from being potato growers, our collective voice globally could also tilt the World Bank to make decisions that favor us. One of such important decisions was parliamentary prior approval of all loans. Those days before...
so that wasn't there?
It wasn't there. The governments would go like they are visiting a witch doctor's shrine in the World Bank, and they get a loan.
Come back with it?
Then you in the newsrooms just announce that we have got a loan and now our indebtedness has increased. Nobody knows how it is negotiated. The documents are like witch doctors' artifacts. So we changed that, and Professor Mutebile was very supportive.
So it became an approval prior by Parliament before you pick the loans?
And that is what people take for granted now. It was not there before. Number two, he was a man of formidable intellect. His mind was like a steamroller. This equipment that flattens the road. Powerful, and he spoke with finality. And I think that is what the character of a central bank boss should be. You know, it is like these consulting doctors. When they come to the room, their presence alone can reassure a patient that
there is hope here.
There is hope. You cannot afford to have somebody who is full of doubts. I think even when he was wrong, he was sure. He may not have known he was wrong, but
he was sure of his moves.
He was a man of conviction, and he was very highly regarded. I do remember I attended a meeting in Athens, again, of the Parliamentary Network on the World Bank. I became notorious, and even some international media houses wrote about me because I confronted the IMF boss, who was at that time Mr. Horst Kohler, who later became the president of Germany. And I had the honor to host him in Gulu when I was LC5. I think I became the only local leader to host a head of state in the history of the world. So the way Emmanuel Mutebile was praised outside, and then you come back here and the media presents him as some kind of unfeeling and ruthless implementer of imperialist policies. The truth is, he had to grapple with very strong international economic winds. I can quote here the former chief economist of the World Bank. He was called Nicholas Stern. He was our very good friend. And I had my own bank governor being praised by economic superstars. You know, these are the rock stars of global economics. I stood 7 feet tall. I was very happy to introduce myself during the break to everybody. I'm from Uganda.
I'm from Uganda, where Professor Mutebile comes from.
Yes, I'm from Uganda. And I was very proud that here is a man being recognized by the financial elites of the world. And yet here in Uganda, we, the so-called potato growers, are trying to reduce him to our size.
To also be
indeed, Jagenda, as the Bible says, a prophet
has no honor.
except, no, has honor except in his own
home, yes.
Yes. Indeed, that is the impression that I got. I had the opportunity to be hosted by him privately, sometimes when we are outside the country. And there are times, you know, our parliament, we were not well paid. Sometime I would meet him in Washington, D.C., and he says, I know you have no money, in his distinct voice. Then he would count some notes in dollars and he gives me, yet he has even bought for me lunch.
Bought for you lunch and
a drink.
Okay.
So you have got to understand this complexity. And the fact that he rose against odds to rise to where he was noticed by powerful people, including President Milton Obote. And he was mentored as a person who had a great future. So I believe that he had merit on account of his intellect and scholarly achievements. There's a book I've recommended to those who are talking about him. He needed to decide what he would not do. I think his mind was not cluttered. He focused on growth, fighting inflation, and economic stability. So he made sure the economy, if the economy were to be seen as a vehicle, he made sure the economy is on the road, even if it is moving slowly, but it must not go off the road.
On the road and in shape.
Of course, occasionally we have slid back, but I think consistently,
we're going forward.
At the macroeconomic level, there have been successes. At the micro level, we have had big disasters. That's why we don't feel the growth in our pockets. Now, that is the next challenge that we have. So, indeed, as we condole with his family and the nation, it is our duty to celebrate his legacy, a legacy of a strong commitment to what he believed to be right. I think he was often unfairly criticized as somebody who was a pushover by these international actors. I don't think so. I think even those white people who came to meet him first made a sign of the cross before entering his office.
Because they knew how strong he was.
Yes.
Which book is this that you've recommended?
I'm going to share it with you even.
Okay.
It's a collection of essays about insiders' accounts of the economic reforms in Uganda. And there's an array of those he mentored. This Mr. Mugambe, who has been in finance, those are people he mentored. Kitabire, those are people he mentored. And many of them have grown on to become respectable international economists. Louis Kasekende is one of those he mentored. And that is what a legacy should be. Because the economy is a strange beast.
Very strange.
If you don't have people who are well-grounded, you can easily have new policies every year.
Well, thank you so much. General Boma, I'm still with you here, and I've also just been told that now Dr. Eli Karuhanga is now ready to speak to us. Doctor, I'm now told you have a very good picture. Thank you very much. We've seen you, and we now need to hear from you. And please speak to us and speak to the world about the Professor Mutebile that you personally knew. Welcome. Unmute your audio on your gadget. Unmute your microphone on your gadget, Professor. Doctor.
Unmuted. I have unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can now hear you.
Very good. No, I just want to thank my brother Mao for what he has been saying. All of that he has been saying was very true and very well put. Thank you, Norbert, as ever. Before I say anything, let me first give my condolences to Professor Mutebile's wife, Betty Chacho, as I know her from her young days, and his son and daughter, in-law and their grandchild and his grandchild. Duncan and Marion, if you are listening in, please accept our condolences. And also, of course, for the Mutebile family, General Sabiti, Mutebile, wherever you are, and all your siblings, sisters, and the bigger relatives, the bigger family. And of course, the Banyachijesi, who saw Manuel as a pillar of their organization and their culture. But I cannot fail to give the condolences to my colleagues, the Rotarians of the Arch Club, Kampala Club, where he was a regular member, and the entire Rotary family in Uganda and worldwide, who have been pouring in a lot of condolences from all over the world to our Rotary Club. Today, Thursday, we always meet at 12:45 to 2 p.m. at the Sheraton. And from here, we will be having a session to recognize him at the Rotary Club. So I'm looking forward to attend that fellowship today again. In that club, whenever he was in the country, he never missed a single one. At one time, when I was president of the club, he was the one who was recording 100% attendance. His presence in our club was always light in the room. And his empty chair will remain an eyesore for us every time we have a fellowship. His character depicted so well in Rotary, and I think it might be a good idea for me to tell you how he came off. He would drive in at the Sheraton or at the Grand Imperial where we used to meet before, in a governor's vehicle, a Mercedes-Benz, good-looking, one of the latest models. His bodyguard and assistant would open the door for him, and he would slowly but assuredly walk into the room. Once he enters the room, the aura of governor would stay there in the car park. Once he enters the room, he became Emmanuel. And he did not carry that office of his in the Rotary Fellowship. He would sing his heart, he would sing, he would crack jokes, he would be so friendly. Rotarians would mingle with him, and you could tell this is a man who enjoys the moment where he is. We Rotarians like to crack jokes, and he loved a good joke. He just always reminded me of Dr. Martin Narika, who also enjoys a good laugh and a good joke. But Tumusime, if he had a fellowship and there was no good joke, he would tell you he's not happy. But apart from that, as you know, in Rotary, we are always looking at those who are less fortunate than ourselves. And he would give generously. He would sponsor people with heart challenges to India personally. He was chairman of a committee which put up a hospital. We put up a hospital in Mukono, and he was the chairman who fundraised for it. He made sure that it was functional. He visited. The land we got was from the late Kasede Mukasa, who I think, from the records which I had from our president, was the one who initiated him into Rotary 39 years ago in 1983, 1st of January. So he was very attached to that Mukono project. And he donated the Heart Institute, the Cancer Institute. He could not become the president of our club, first because of his job, but also it could have been a conflict of interest for him maybe. But be that as it may, his personality came out so well in Rotary. That's when you knew who his true character is. Now, for me, who knew him from the old days of school and Makerere, and who had a free entrance to his home, because also his wife knew me from those old days, and his family, and who would go there and enjoy a good drink with him, and we laugh. I knew who he was. Inside his home, he was a very soft guy. He was very kind. He was funny. He loved to joke and laugh. He would laugh at himself. You didn't want to leave his company. And you would have to leave in the wee hours of the morning if you dared to visit him. But professionally, is what Mao described him to be, almost perfectly. A great guy, somebody who, after speaking, if you are abroad with him, you immediately start describing yourself as a Ugandan because you want to be identified with pride because he gives you that sense of professional pride. Somebody who knew what he was talking about and who put it with finality. He didn't miss words, and he was not intimidated by anybody. He was not intimidated by people who were bigger than him in authority. He told them exactly what he thinks should be told. And I think in the program, I'll have the chance to talk to you about my days with him in Makerere.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Karuhanga. We will come to that, and we really thank you so much. We know from just the looks that you've put on is that you really lost a brother, you lost a friend, and you lost somebody very close and dear to you. We know that very well. I personally met Professor Mutebile in 2005. And my first encounter with him was actually at his house, at his home. That's where I went. I just wrote it somewhere on social media that he bought me my first car, and actually my laptop, Professor Mutebile. He was also my very good friend at that level, and I couldn't imagine Professor Mutebile liking me and loving me just as a young, simple boy from the university. And the first car I ever owned as a personal car was actually given to me, bought for me by Professor Emmanuel Tumsime Mutebile. The money that he gave me, I bought a car, I bought a laptop, and I went to him and I said, here is the car, here is the laptop. And he said, okay, go and do work. I enjoyed working with him, and he was indeed that man that I also knew for not so many years, but very honorable. We will just hear from Dr. Nduguru Hakana Rugunda in a recorded message, and of course what he knew about Professor Mutebile. Then we'll come back to this conversation. Let's hear from Professor, from Dr. Ruhakana Rugunda.
As you rightly say, he's a childhood friend of mine. We went to school together, primary, some in secondary. We went to different schools, but we then converged at Makerere University. And from time to time, we converged in Kabale, where both of us hail from. Tumusime, Uganda really was lucky to have somebody like Tumusime, because he's somebody who has made a significant contribution to the country and a significant contribution to the continent. He's somebody who has been very principled, somebody who is who has been very forthright, somebody who rejected and defied intrigue. So we have lost somebody who is intelligent, principled, and open, and candid person who you can rely on. Has been a very reliable person. He has not only been technically a competent man, but as a human being, he has also been a reliable, dependable person. He has penetrated society, and he has been able to deal with people with very limited means, in as much as has been able to deal with people who are well-to-do. Perhaps the key element about Tumusiime is that he used his knowledge, his education, for the development of Uganda and for solving Uganda's and Africa's problems, especially economic problems. And the very, very well talked about fact is that when Uganda was having significant economic problems, especially after NRM took over power, we did realize that we needed to reform the economy because inflation was very high, sometimes up to 250%. And the person who spearheaded this reform program, economic reform program, which brought sanity in our currency and in our economy, is Emmanuel Tumusiime Mutebile. Of course, he was not working alone. He was working with others, but he played a leading role. And in that context, he faced substantial resistance from the political leadership who was suspicious of reforms. But he was able to take his time and bring the political leadership on board, and the country was able to accept, to implement radical reforms. And these radical reforms included removing 2 zeros from the money that we had, and a number of other economic reforms. So in a way, he has been a leader in the economic transformation and reform of our country. And of course, he was also not only helpful to Uganda, but he has also been helpful in the region, and he has done some consulting work for the World Bank and for IMF. It is intriguing, and you Ugandans should be very proud about this, that while many people have been running to some of those financial institutions, Uganda, because of its successful reform program, was able to attract many people to come and see how Uganda has done it. So really, Tumusiime Mutebile helped in making Uganda's reforms, economic reforms, a success, and making Uganda a magnet to attract people who learned from our experience so that they can practice it in their own countries. He grew in economic stature and in a way political stature because of the successful reforms that were taking place in Uganda. So if you want, he became a consultant to a number of other institutions and countries. And indeed, that's why the continent and the international community has been hit with this departure of our comrade, who, although sick, was still making enormous contribution in the field of economic management, economic policy, and economic reforms, locally and globally. Mutebile worked on principles. Mutebile was not corrupt. Mutebile was forthright. Therefore, if we had more and more Ugandans acting and behaving in the way Mutebile was, I'm sure we'll be having less problems. Therefore, although he has gone and is now not physically with us, let us remember his great examples, his conduct, his forthrightness, his capacity to help a country reform itself. So he has gone, but let's learn from him. Let's emulate his life, and our country will continue to be better. He has made Uganda better. It's our duty to make it even better. That the country has been plagued by sectarian politics. Tumusiime Mutebile from his early days rejected sectarian politics and took people as people. In fact, him and I, during our secondary school days, worked as leaders of Kigezi United Youth Association. An effort from that early age to bring people together. Therefore, among the many things that Mutebile will be remembered about will be his struggle, ceaseless struggle to have people united so that they can focus on issues of great importance to the country and great importance for the development of the people themselves. I want to pay tribute to Betty Mutebile, his wife, and the Mutebile family, who have really steadily, solidly supported Tumusiime, even when he has been sick and during the happier times. That has been a commendable piece of work which we all appreciate. I also want to thank the Bank of Uganda, because the Bank of Uganda has looked after Tumusiime for more than 20 years. And to me, this shows a lot of loyalty, a lot of cohesion, and that family of Bank of Uganda, which has also done great work for the country, I salute them for looking after the governor for more than 20 years, and it's commendable work. Let me also take this opportunity to salute the doctors, nurses, and health workers who have supported Ndugu Tumusiime Mutebile in making sure that he's strong enough and he lives for as long as possible to continue making a contribution to the country. And lastly, let me salute His Excellency the President, who has supported Tumusiime during periods of sickness. And in fact, at one stage, I remember that His Excellency the President put at the disposal of Tumusiime Mutebile, Governor, his plane so that he could be taken for treatment. So this combination of the people I have mentioned, and indeed the people of Uganda who have given him general support, I commend them. They have made the life of Ndugu Tumusiime Mutebile a happy life, a life where he is enabled to make an enormous contribution to the country and humanity without too many obstacles and without too many constraints.
From the school times. Now, I want to pick it up here from Dr. Ndugu Rugunda for what he said. And coming back to you, Honorable Mao. In 2009, Uganda hosted the second, I think it was the second in this country, a Smart Partnership Conference at the Speak Resort in Munyonyo. We had just hosted the Choga meeting in 2007. And Professor Emmanuel Tumusiime Mutebile, who at that time was actually my friend, in that meeting at the Speak Resort in Munyonyo, did a presentation that gave him a standing ovation. And I remember the then governor of the Central Bank of Zimbabwe called Gideon Gono, who picked lots of these ideas from Professor Mutebile and said, if we carried this from you and took it to Zimbabwe, we will make sure that we also revamp our economy. And he got a standing ovation for who he was. What am I talking about here is that you notice that he was overshadowed by politics, and his image has also been tainted by the politicians. What needs to be done to cite persons that the rest of the world looks to and say how we wish that he was our own, and in the country where they are, and nobody seems to remember them or even appreciate the very good things that they do, like Professor Mutebile now.
I think interference with the central bank leadership can create a problem in an economy. Central bank governors should be like, you would say, people who run media programs. Imagine if the owner of the media program, or the owner of the media house, is giving you instructions when you are on air.
On how to ask a question also.
There was a rumor that there was a man who used to call the producers of his media house, and he tells them, the movie you have put, I have already watched it, so can you put another one? So it is like, the media house is for
the boss,
to serve him,
not the public.
Yes. So, but in Uganda, the Bank of Uganda is protected, and the person and office of the governor is also protected, but that is also within limits. I would be the last to pretend that President Museveni has not been interfering and intervening. Indeed, if you refer to the book I talked about, and insiders accounts of Uganda's economic reforms, Governor Mutebile states clearly that the architect of Uganda's economic reforms, the successes, failures, and disasters, is President Museveni. In fact, he puts an entire section of his chapter, the role of President Museveni. There are two important things we should know. When President Museveni assumed office, the NRMs always say, capturing power.
Assumed office.
Well, because they are a militant organization, they like to use militant words like capturing. He had his own view based on the 10-point program, where he states that he wants a mixed economy, where the role of the private sector and the role of the government are well balanced. In other words, the market can determine certain directions, but public interest should be key. You do recall the times of the barter trade, when President Museveni said, why do we need anybody's money, whether dollars or pounds? We can take our beans to Cuba and get drugs. Of course, that was a miserable failure. And Professor Mutevile passes judgment on President Museveni's earlier days in that book. He says President Museveni led the economy to the precipice, which is basically a deep cliff that he peered down, and he didn't like what he saw and beat a retreat, and he has never gone back. At that time, President Museveni now changed his tune. He said, government has no business being in business.
Government doesn't do business.
Now again, he's making some other reversals. Corona has taught us that government must be in business. Otherwise, where would we get affordable sanitizers if it was the market to determine sanitizers? Right now, we need the equipment for fighting the enemies of Uganda, terrorists and so on. You can't go to buy armored personnel carriers, to buy guns and bullets from the market. We must make them in Luwero Industries. So that those who want to attack Uganda think twice. Now that one is government being in business. So President Museveni has zigzagged through these years in economic terms. And I think Professor Mutevile should be credited with creating